Frank Taylor. I'm a co-pilot for Pan Am. I'd like to cash this check here and then... I'd read the book years ago. I was a huge fan of the book, and I knew that they tried to make the movie a couple different times through the years, and it never came together. I was off shooting gangs in New York. I read the script. I thought Jeff Nathanson did an unbelievable job of adapting it into a screenplay, which was very hard to do. Then I basically started looking for a director to be involved, and I didn't even think of Mr. Spielberg as an option. I didn't even think that he would be interested in it.
I'm proud to be able to say that I feel that Leo hired me more than I hired Leo. Leo was already set to play to portray Frank. I had just come off of Minority Report, just finished shooting it, and I was sort of in a dark place, having made 2 semi-dark pictures back to back, and thought, wow, what a breath of fresh air this will be for me. I really sometimes enjoy that whiplash sensation going from Jurassic Park to Schindler's List, and I had a chance now to go from Minority Report to Catch Me If You Can. So selfishly, I looked at this story as an opportunity for me to take a really great creative vacation and work with a young man who I've always admired, who one day was kind enough, just based on my calling as agent, to send my daughter, his biggest fan, an autographed picture. And, and that meant a lot in my family, and made me a hero amongst my kids. And I got DiCaprio's signature on a picture for my daughter, who was at the time about 7 years old. I always wanted to work with Leo, so this was a really great opportunity to come over to his house and had a great meeting, and decided at that moment that we were excited to work together.
You gonna take a role every night?
Yes, I will, Dr. Ashland. And if you're gonna be late, I suggest you bring a note. I don't think there's been many movies about con artists, and especially a con artist that was 18 years old and probably the biggest bank robber of all time right after he graduated high school. For an actor, it's about the art of misdirection and how he's able to make somebody, for example, concentrate on the steak dinner as opposed to the phony check that he's about to pass. And I think those are all fantastic elements for an actor to play.
Carl, on the other side of the hotel, they got suites that face the park.
The studio called and asked if I would mind speaking to Leo on the telephone for a few minutes. And I said, of course not. And so they said, he'll call you at home this evening. And he was so interested in the character. He said, I've read the book, I've read the script, what I want to know is you. What did you feel when you did this? How did you feel about this? I was very impressed with that. So when I hung up from the phone, I was very excited that he was going to play the part. But then about a few months later, he called again and said, would you mind spending some time with me? I said, sure, I'll be happy to do that. So I went out and literally spent about 3 days with Leo at his home. Constantly, he was following me around with a recorder. He was taking notes.
I met with Frank, who is quite an interesting person. I've said this before, but you don't think he would steal a postage stamp. He looks as innocent as a school teacher. He looks like the sweetest, most unassuming man you'd ever meet. But he has a way of engaging you with his eye contact, with his energy and his intelligence. I remember him coming to set one day, and the whole crew basically took their own spontaneous lunch, even though we were in the middle of a shot, and started listening to Frank Abagnale talk about all of his cons for half an hour. And all of a sudden Steven came and was like, what the hell's going on? What are you guys doing? We got to get back to work. He has that way about him, and I think the most interesting thing about him is that a lot of his way of seducing people was very unconscious. And the thing that I brought to the character was his subtlety in the way he sort of switched accents, and to make him seem more trustworthy, or to make him seem higher up on the totem pole of success.
I should work on my accent.
Play back the other camera, please.
At a certain point, you get enough of your information from the real life person, and then you have to go off on your own and create that character and become that character. I wanted to let that character have a life of its own.
This is a hospital, ladies, not a sorority.
I wanted the audience to be carried along with him as he discovered these things and made mistakes along the way in impersonating people. I didn't want to be too perfect, because I don't think Frank was. I think he got by on his etiquette, his charm, his personalities, and his ability to misdirect people to think about something else in situations, rather than how perfect he acted as a lawyer or as a pilot or as a doctor.
He's a very inventive actor, and he gets a lot of ideas, as I do, and so we sort of met halfway on many things and had a great time doing it.
You really think I have to go?
That was good. That was
good, wasn't it?
No.
That's good. Leo likes to watch himself on the monitor between takes. He likes to watch his playbacks. He's more critical of himself than even I am. And I remember every time we finished a series of takes, maybe 7, 8 takes, I'd be really happy. I'd say, okay, let's move on. And Leo would say, just one more for the Gipper. And then what Leo would do is he'd do the last take, and he'd throw all caution to the wind with the way he would approach this take that was for the Gipper, meaning I was free to ignore it, to laugh at it, to say, Leo, you're over the top. We'll never use that in the movie. And 80% of the time, those takes where he felt he was free, under no pressure to perform anymore because he was satisfied with what he had done on take maybe 5 and take 7, but on take 8, he'd throw caution to the wind, and very often that's the take that would wind up in the movie. You know, there's some takes, Leo, you just know in your mind. It's in the picture. You just know it.
Shouldn't you go?
No. They have a staff doctor in the emergency ward. We'll be fine.
Carl Hanratty is an FBI agent who specializes and takes great pride in working bank fraud, forgeries, check kiting, and he comes across this paper hanger, as they're called, who is certainly a par above the average check forger, and he makes it sort of his life mission and also his professional pride to track him down and catch him if he can.
I want to call a truce, all right?
No truce. You will be caught. You will go to prison. Where did you think this was going?
I knew that he was chasing me because he was the agent assigned to my case.
But I can't tell you how thrilled I am that you took this part and you're playing the part. And I love the accent. This is the first time I got.
He was much like Tom Hanks. He was a Boston Irish kind of guy, and I think that the more he chased me, the more he realized that I was a kid, and it took them a long time to put together that I was just a kid and not some adult. I think that he kind of admired some of the things that I did, and he thought I was very creative, and I don't think he saw me as really a bad person. He just thought I was somebody caught up in all of this. So I actually never got to meet him until he arrested me and took me into custody. But over the years, of course, he and I became very close friends, and my involvement in the FBI, I had been involved with him, and today he's still alive and 82 years old and retired, obviously. But we have a great relationship. But I do like in the film that they bring out that relationship of him chasing me and what he thought of me and what I was thinking of him during the time he was chasing me and so on.
I'm going to let you fly tonight, Frank. Not even going to try to stop you, because I know you'll be back.
I sent Tom Hanks the script as a writing sample because I was very, very excited about what Jeff had achieved. And in the back of my mind, I was saying, well, maybe, just maybe, he'd love to do a little cameo as the father. I never believed or dreamt that he'd want to play Carl. And we were talking, he said, boy, that's a great script. And I said, yeah, what about that father role? I said, yeah, that's a great role, but, you know, what about Carl Hanratty? Who's going to be doing that? And I couldn't imagine that he would be drawn to playing, in some ways, a supporting role. In Tom's hands, it became really an equal role.
Then you know what the thing to do is to flip these two lines. So I tell him I went to law school, was the best and brightest. And
I remember getting the phone call from him, and his first thing was, I hope you don't mind that, you know, I'm going to be involved in this movie. I don't want to take away from anything that's going on. I read the script. I was so intrigued by that character and by your character in the whole movie. I wanted to work with Stephen again. I hope you don't mind. I'm like, of course not. I mean, I was extremely honored, and what it was like working with him, I think we had a great time. We had such a high amount of energy every day, and we were constantly trying new things, constantly pushing each other and coming up with new ideas. He's such a great actor, and he brings so much to the table as an artist.
You're just a kid.
Yeah, when I'm not your kid.
From a purely selfish point of view, this was a role that I haven't ever played before. I'm an antagonist with almost a protagonist bent, that I want to do good and I want to do my job and I want to save somebody. And at the same time, I'm a protagonist with an antagonist role, is that yes, I am good, but I'm still going to hunt this guy down without any mercy. So as an actor, I thought, boy, this is freeing for me, actually, in a lot of ways. I'm single-minded, not a lot of costume changes. I'm literally fitting into the mold of the pursuer who never gives up. Selfishly, I had never got to do that as an actor before, and also quite selfishly. To work with Stephen again, to work with Leo, and Chris Walken as well. This is one of these jobs where I can't believe I have the job. I can't believe I have the gig.
This comes after that, like that.
Let's do that for a second.
See that, Mitch? So we shoot through the side,
Right.
And then Tom looks at it. You edit down. Every actor is different. I mean, I always say that, you know, a director is kind of like a shrink, you know. It's a constant inventory of patients revolving in and out of the analyst's life, you know, so in that we need to adjust ourselves to the people that come into our lives. Tom Hanks has a different approach to acting. Tom has a kind of built-in naturalness. He just, it's so effortless. He doesn't have to push or shove or struggle internally in order to perform. He doesn't worry too much about what he does.
Frank William Abagnale. Let me see. Il est écrit ici qu'il est dans l'armée.
Yes.
They wrote it down for me. Did it make any sense at all to you? Can you look at that one? No, it didn't. Damn. I took a shot.
Tom, first and foremost, is trusting of himself. An actor needs to trust the director, but more importantly, the actor needs to trust himself. He is remarkably facile, like a Spencer Tracy or a Henry Fonda or Jimmy Stewart, as he's so often compared. And that's a compliment, because those actors had a kind of everyday naturalism that made you feel that the dialogue wasn't being written for them, but they were in fact improvising the lines as they went through the movie. And Tom's in that very rarefied group of actors that make it look so easy.
What I learned from him, and I told him this myself, is that it is possible to be a great actor in this business, do great work, and have a body of great work and not become crazy. A lot of people that I respect, unfortunately, become disillusioned after a while and become these less than desirable people to probably meet or be around, and he's retained his morals. He has a sense of humor about it all, which I think is extremely important. And that, to me, is the most successful thing in the world, if you can be so great at what you do, yet still be such a great, normal guy.
Stop chasing me.
I can't stop. It's my job.
I took the train here, Frank. I'm taking the train home.
My father actually was a very, very loving man who loved his children more than he loved life itself. He was a man that made it a point every day of your life to tell you he loved you, both physically and by its spoken word. What I remember most about growing up is my dad, it was 4 children. Every night he was in your bedroom, and he would drop down on a knee. He was 6'3". He'd give you a kiss on the cheek. He'd pull the cover up, and he'd whisper in your ear, I love you very much. That was the last thing you heard every night. My father, unfortunately, died while I was in prison, so I never got to see him. I never got to tell him how much I loved him, how much I missed him.
In real life, when Frank ran away from home after the divorce, he really never saw his father again. But we have created an entire subplot between his father and Frank in order to better motivate and inform the audience as to who Frank is. While he's having so much fun on the surface, there is a deeper, more painful existence in his life that keeps bringing him back down to earth.
I keep talking about the people staring at him.
Yes, yes.
That the first thing is my son is going to Hollywood tonight. Is, you know, hey, for the benefit of you eavesdropping.
Exactly. I'd always wanted to make a movie with Chris Walken and had been a huge fan of Chris Walken's from a number of films, but most noteworthy for me is The Deer Hunter. And had always had just a desire to work with him. I have a long list, and I'm slowly checking off the actors I've always wanted to work with. And Chris was certainly on that list. And Chris Walken was Walter Park's idea, to cast him in Catch Me If You Can. I didn't come up with him right away. It was something that Walter said, have you ever considered Chris Walken? And the minute he said that, it sort of everything came into focus about who could play Leonardo DiCaprio's father.
My son, the Birdman, some uniform, Frank.
What do you think?
I grew up in that time. The furniture in the house, the things in the kitchen, you know, the clothing that I wear, the cars that I see in the street, it's all very much part of the way I grew up in America, yeah.
Of all those men, you were the one. Remember that you were the one who took her home.
200 men sitting in that tiny social hall watching her dance.
Chris is someone who makes something new every time.
200 men sitting in that tiny social hall watching a dance.
There was one extraordinary example of that. We were shooting a scene between Frank and his father. He did his first several 5 or 6 takes in the widest shot. It's fantastic, amazing. We're now in his close-ups. And the third one, halfway through this speech, he wells up, his voice breaks, and he starts to weep.
200 men sitting in that tiny social hall watching a dance.
And it was so real and so immediate, and Leo, being the actor he is, went with it, Stephen went with it, and it changed the essence of the scene.
I didn't speak a word of French. 6 weeks later, she was...
Oh, man.
I wouldn't mind trying one straight. You know, I mean, just...
Why? It's brilliant. What you did was brilliant. Let's not do it straight. It was wonderful. That was straight. That was a great
No, I know.
choice. Unbelievable. Chris, seriously, that was an amazing choice. I don't even know if Chris Walken knows what he's going to do when the camera starts rolling. I think he does have a muse in his life, and I think the muse has as many personalities as Sybil. And so from take 1 to take 8, Chris would give me different choices and give himself different opportunities to find different ways of exploring that character. So he did it differently every single time, which was fantastic.
I've made a lot of movies, and I'm always surprised at the result. No matter what I thought about it while I was making it, is always full of surprises. I'd love to do one where we talk together.
I mean, like where I repeat some of them.
Or just step on each other's lines.
I automatically felt this huge connection towards him. I mean, I admired him so much as an actor, and that's probably what it came from. And I think that really helped for my character in relationship to his father, because my character has this unbelievable admiration towards his father, and anything his father does is just the most brilliant, ingenious thing. And even though his father's in sort of his own fantasy world, you know, I've always wanted him to play my father, and this was the perfect opportunity and the perfect character for him.
To the moon. To the moon. To the moon.
I lived in a very small village in France, Montréchal.
The nice thing about having a mom and having a dad is your mom and dad will always love you, no matter what you do. So, you know, my mom obviously forgave me for the things I did and loves me, and I love my mother.
Paula is Frank Abagnale's mother. She's French, fortunately for me, because I have no problem with French accent at all. I hope you're all hungry. I put out the Sara Lee. She met her husband when she was 18, and she was get pregnant, and she had to marry her husband. So she missed something in her life.
Yes. Don't put any energy behind it.
Yes.
If you put too much energy behind it, you'll get confused. Just sort of say it.
Kind of place where I've never heard of Sara Lee.
Yeah, that's great. You see that? In real life, Frank Abagnale's mother was French. So I wanted to stay true to that aspect of the story by casting a French actress, and I had always recalled how much I liked the script girl on Day for Night, Truffaut's film, who was Natalie Baye. A very close friend of mine, my director friend Brian De Palma, was living in Paris at the time.
So you can do the test with who you want, but my friend Brian De Palma is in Paris, and he can do the test with you. So I say, why not? It's better to do the test with Brian than De Palma. So I did the test with him, and he was so nice with me. And we're not used to do tests in France. I think it's a very good experience to do tests. And they chose me. I was lucky.
I think she's extremely talented. She has such a spark in her eye and such an enthusiasm. She had such an enthusiasm for working on this project. She really did love every minute of it. And I think she was so well cast for this part. It's unbelievable.
You're not going to tell him, are you?
I'm very impressed by Leo because he's such a young man, and he's a big star. Wonderful actors with a lot of emotional power, very, very strong, you know. At the same time, he has no star aptitude, you know. He's very simple, and he's still a young man with a lot of happiness, and he's a very simple and very wonderful young guy.
Don't be afraid. Ask the question you came here to ask me. I play the district attorney. I brought him into my office as a young prosecutor because he's conned me into thinking he's a lawyer, and we're overwhelmed by him, and our daughter's nuts about him. So we found a son, you know. It's a crushing blow when he's revealed to be a fraud.
There's Martin. Hey, Martin. Hey, good morning. To have had the opportunity to work with Martin Sheen was fun for me and great. That's great. Now we'll start moving. That's great.
Stop at the post here.
I'd always admired the Sheen family, you know, just an amazing family of actors like the Fondas. And I wanted to work with Martin Sheen, and I just took a chance. Didn't think he'd say yes. It was a very small part, and he was right in the middle of West Wing. But John Wells really cooperated. He's the producer of West Wing. And Marty wanted to do it, and John Wells made it happen so Marty could take the time off to do Catch Me If You Can, which was fantastic.
I'm smiling, man. You know, I'm working with a genius. I'm bragging about it. I go back to the set on the West Wing and I just beam, and he's always been one of the icons in this industry. I mean, there are 3 directors that I've had the pleasure of working with that have been milestones in my life. There's Francis Ford Coppola with Apocalypse, and Terrence Malick with Badlands, and now Steven Spielberg with Catch Me If You Can. He caught me.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
You know, I never apologized for the women in my life when I was doing that, because I was a kid who had the opportunity to date women that were 10 years older than me. I always loved women. To this day, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I've never used drugs, but I was always addicted to women at a very young age. But I never took any of those relationships seriously because I always felt that, you know, I was 17 and they were 25. So there was no way I was going to marry them. I wasn't even legally old enough to marry them if I wanted to marry them. And the only girl, Brenda, who in the film was really an actual girl I did meet, and she, I know, was getting very serious about me. So I felt the need to become honest with her and tell her who I was, and I did. And of course she betrayed me, or what I believed to be a betrayal at that age and at that time.
When you realize Brenda's betrayed you, can you physicalize, if you're going to wear glasses, which is fine with me, can you physicalize it either by putting your head for a few minutes on the wheel?
Of course, I grew up and realized that she did what was the right thing to do, which was to turn me in. But of course, I didn't look at it at that time. It only reinforced that, well, see, you can't trust people. And if you're not somebody, nobody cares about you. And so it just reinforced all those things I believed instead. And after that, I never told anyone who I really was from that point on.
You know, you go into a lot of auditions and you feel like, I need to look my best, I need to have on a lot of makeup, you need to really present yourself. And I really thought about who I felt Brenda was. And I think Brenda's mom picks out most of her stuff. And when you meet Brenda, she hasn't been at home for a while, and she's wearing braces. Do you notice anything different?
You got your braces off.
So when I decided to read for the part, I put in my whitening trays from my teeth bleaching so that it would feel like I had braces, because Brenda's very self-conscious about it when you first meet her. And I read no makeup, and my hair, I didn't wash it, and I wore baggy clothes and these little flat shoes, and I went in and I auditioned for the casting director, Deborah Zane, who's amazing.
I was blessed because I had one of the most ingenious casting directors I've ever worked with in Deborah Zane. And Debbie Zane brought a lot of potential Brendas to me. But when she brought me Amy Adams, I could tell that there was a girl on tape that she really liked, because she came in so excited. And she had this tape in her hand, and she was holding the tape like it was the Rosetta Stone of this whole movie. Just look at her first. Look at Amy first. So I put Amy Adams' tape in and looked at her first. And then Leo came in that afternoon. And I said, Leo, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm going to show you about 8 or 9 girls. Tell me who you like. And I showed Leo 8 or 9 different actresses. And right away he said, oh, go back. Who's that? And I was just watching his face. The minute Amy came on, he just leaned back and pointed at the screen. He said, that's Brenda.
I looked at it and I was blown away, because she had already previously developed this character and was Brenda Strong. Amy brought so much of this to the character right away that it was almost a situation where Stephen really just sort of needed to wind her up and let her go, you know? And you say,
shouldn't you go?
And I'll move in for after I say my line, no.
Kiss,
no, they have a staff doctor in the emergency ward. Kiss.
And one thing he brought out in Brenda that I was so surprised and thrilled that he brought out was a sense of humor. I was so surprised because when I read it, it's a very serious role. She's sad a lot, she cries a lot. I was just so thrilled that he found the sense of humor in it.
Amy in real life is not Brenda Strong at all. I mean, she's a whole different personality in real life. And the challenge is to go into total disguise. So you're unrecognizable. Walking down the street in a movie, you take on a life of your own. I'm really happy with her performance. I think she's brilliant.
How much would you pay me for the entire night?
There's a scene in which I meet Jennifer Gardner, who pawns herself off as a model, who's essentially, you know, a prostitute for hire, and is trying to con this young man out of some money and get him to pay for some hanky-panky. And it's one of the funniest scenes in the movie, in the sense that I eventually get a leg up on her.
Isn't that what you want, Stephen? This side like this, or this side?
I worked all week on Alias, and we finished last night about 1 in the morning. Yeah, I just got up and came to work today. But it's so exciting to be here, and it's so energizing that I've tricked my body into thinking that it's not Saturday, and I got a lot of sleep, so I'm doing all right.
Oh, I have an idea. I'm sorry, I have an idea.
We're shooting today at the Ambassador Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, and it used to be this beautiful place where all the movie stars stayed. I think Frank Sinatra stayed in one of the bungalows, and all kinds of people, and it is where Bobby Kennedy was shot, of course.
The scene is only in the movie really because of Leo DiCaprio. In our attempts to construct scripts, sometimes we can forget about the very sequences or moments that interested us in the first place. And it was maybe less than a week before we started shooting that Leo, in looking at the script, said, you know, you guys left out one of the best moments in the whole book. This moment between Frank and the call girl where he passes the check and actually gets cash back.
If they sold me downstairs at the hotel gift shop, how much would you pay?
I watch a lot of TV, and I find a lot of really great people, sometimes lurking in the wings in supporting roles, other times right out front in starring roles on television. I have been watching Alias, and when I saw Jennifer Gardner, I immediately said, this is the next superstar. I said, gee, I wonder if she'd do a small part in my picture, because I really wanted to work with her. I admired her so much, playing all these different characters that she plays in her series. And she came and worked for a day, and she was just remarkable.
600?
Go fish. Well, this really happened. There was this woman named Cheryl Ann who was a model in the 60s, and she met Frank, and she sold her services to him.
Why don't I start off with $100? $100? No, it is? Okay.
It's always awkward when you find yourself making out with someone that you've met only a couple of hours before.
Ready. And then she breaks the kiss and looks, make the turn. She looks.
But I'm trying to justify it to myself by saying that the characters had only met as well. So we met a couple hours ago, and we're in there just, you know, getting after it. And it would be awkward, except that he's so lovely. So it's fine.
300?
Go fish.
Catch Me If You Can is certainly a deviation from, stylistically, from the films that Stephen has been doing through the years. And I would just mention at the outset that it's incredible to me that this is our 20th film that we've done together. Can you imagine? Over a period of about 30 years, which bespeaks something about the even-temperedness of Mr. Spielberg. I think we're close friends and colleagues. It's been a wonderful experience.
Right here. So great, so great.
And in all of those years, we never really have done a piece like this. Catch Me If You Can, it's really a sort of bonbon, if you like. It's light, it's amusing and entertaining.
Carl, welcome to the FBI.
Oddly enough, about a serious subject. But as I say, this bonbon, for me, presented some interesting musical changes and slightly challenges, too, from the other films. It takes place in the 1960s, so some of the music particularly the opening music, has a kind of 60s swagger to it and has a jazz saxophone that you would hear in that period. Brilliantly played and recreated by a member of the orchestra here that we have. And so that's been fun. Actually, for me personally, it's a kind of like a perfect regression because I would write some jazz music in the 50s and 60s when I'm very young. So it made a kind of a loop for me, a regressive loop, if you like. Most of the music is playful and whimsical, and there's material that I call closing in, that as the FBI gets closer and closer and closer to our subject and tracking him down for prosecuting him, this sort of jazzy music connects us with the tension of the closing loop of the ever-approaching FBI.
This guy's a no-show.
For Frank's character, and he does go through all of these different permutations and disguises and so on, his music is really uniform. Whenever he's conceiving of a new scam, a new trick, this magical little music that's kind of almost a little bit funny invades his character, and we go off with him on another escapade.
Must have slipped right off your neck.
And that little trigger, that little musical trigger, is always the same. There are a couple of scenes where he's linked musically with his father, where he's alone, where he's tired of the chase. He makes friends with the FBI agent over the phone and almost wants to be captured, we think.
It's over. I'm gonna stop now.
We also use period top 40s hit tunes.
Merry Christmas. Hey, behind your head. The car. Get me in the car, please. The look of love is in your eyes.
Hello?
But in this case, I really went for melody and mood as opposed to relevance with lyrics.
The people in that little French village were so happy to see Americans. They decided to put on a show for us.
And there's old-fashioned songs like Embraceable You, the Judy Garland version, and Come Fly With Me, the Frank Sinatra version.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
And then, of course, you know, we have Johnny's score, almost an hour of amazing music in the idiom of progressive jazz that was very popular in the 50s and 60s. I think Charlie Parker would be very proud of him.
Catch Me If You Can has been a good opportunity for me to revisit some part of myself that's been slumbering dormant for a few decades now. I said to the orchestra yesterday, it's a kind of perfect regression, you know, to go back to some of this, but I have enjoyed that part of it very much, I think, in this. For me personally, it's been a nice musical trip.
This piece is so good, it's like the death of two salesmen.
Then you want to get up right above there, right there.
Mrs. Hanratty.
Hello, Carl.
Hello. Tom Hanks and I, we love, you know, technical advisors. We had our real FBI agent giving truth and facts that emboldened Tom to take all these risks as an actor and at the same time not do something that would embarrass the FBI.
My name is Bill Rader, and I was formerly a special agent with the FBI. I had a 33-year career with the Bureau. I've been retired since 1999, And this has been my first opportunity to function as a technical advisor on a movie. And of course, it's right up my alley because this movie, Catch Me If You Can, involves basically a chase between the FBI and a perpetrator.
This is Hanratty.
My job on the set is to advise both as to authenticity within the script, also for the sets, for the costumes, for the props, for the manner in which the agents conduct themselves throughout the movie.
Knicker scanners at every bank read these numbers at the bottom of a check and then ship that check off to its corresponding branch.
The depictions here are very accurate in terms of how a check passer works, what materials he needs to do this type of crime.
This check is for $1,400. We agreed upon $1,000.
Why don't I give you back $400 and you give me that check?
Even better.
During the 60s, it was fairly easy to do these types of crimes, mainly because the sophistication on the part of bank security was not as tight as today. But today, these crimes are still committed with a certain amount of facility because of the advancement in technology. During the 60s and the early 70s, when Abagnale was operating and hanging paper throughout the United States and the world, most of the checks that he counterfeited, he did on kind of a cut and paste method. He became more sophisticated as time went by, of course, but in today's world, although there are advancements in security, the crime is still prevalent throughout the United States and throughout Europe.
Merry Christmas!
It's interesting that I walk onto the set today and look around at these scenes that are set in the 1960s because it's almost as if I have blinked my eyes and have awakened some 35 years earlier. I was an agent at the time when this was a dress of the day and the hairstyles of the day and whatnot, and it's a real nostalgic step back for me, particularly the FBI field office set. It was so representative of a typical field office that it almost had to blink my eyes to make sure that it wasn't completely real. Because they had done so much research on this, even down to the door frames and the style of windows.
Special Agent Hanratty, FBI.
I had a partner early on in the Cleveland division when I first started in 1966 who looks very much like Mr. Hanks, right down to the glasses and the fact that he wore a fedora hat. So this was a real trip down memory lane for me.
Cut. Great. That was your best take.
Reset, please. As far as the women in the background and the ones that have speaking parts, it's eerie because they were very much as portrayed in this movie.
Mr. Abagnale is here.
I can't believe that they found these middle-aged women and dressed them in these period outfits. It really was a wonderful experience for me to kind of step back and see life as it was in the 60s.
This is 1964. Did the police hold their guns that way in 64?
Or was it just this? Actually, in 64, most of the time it was like this, and then when you bring them down, you could bring them down like this.
Yeah, just so it doesn't look like too modern.
In the 1960s, agents were regimented to a certain degree. Long hair was not tolerated. Beards and mustaches were not tolerated. The type of clothing you wear was always very conservative business wear. White shirts were preferred. Of course, the mode of the day was a three-button suit, a slender tie. But as far as the personalities were concerned, the agents were very resolute. And in this particular movie, the Tom Hanks character, Carl Hanratty, is a typical example of an agent who is very, very dedicated to his work.
Drop it! Relax! You're late, all right? My name's Alan, Barry Allen, United States Secret Service.
The idea that the perpetrator in this case has actually beaten him into thinking that he was someone else and then skated out from under Carl's hand, not able to make the apprehension.
Wait. Your wallet. You hang on to it for a minute. I trust you.
And then Carl's reaction to that, taking it very personally, is one that I can identify with very much. And any agent who has been embarrassed to that extent would take it personally. And the cool professional attitude can kind of slip aside as one becomes almost obsessed with the capture of the one who got away.
Hey! You're going to get caught. It's a mathematical fact. It's like Vegas. The house always wins.
I think that it portrays the Bureau as it looked at the time. There are certain comical aspects to it and certain personality traits that not all agents had at the time, but that's certainly acceptable.
Sean, would you like to hear me tell a joke?
Yeah, sure.
Knock, knock.
Certainly in today's world, there could easily be another Frank Abagnale Jr. How far they're going to get in light of counter moves by the FBI, by bank security, and certainly by the assistance of Frank Abagnale himself, is a matter of conjecture and something we'll just have to see.
You're gonna have to catch me.
I love the meeting yesterday with Frank, by the way.
He's a great guy.
I really enjoyed that.
He was so happy too, Stephen, about meeting you. He liked you so much. I was like, God, you just mention any scene and he knows exactly what you're talking about. That's just great. He knows what he's doing.
I would say that probably 90% of the film is accurate. I think that he is basing a movie inspired on my life, but it's not a documentary. So he's taken that into consideration, and I think he realizes he's taking 5 years of my life, compacting it into a 2-hour movie, so there are some shortcuts they have to take and some things they have to change.
Leo should be half, like this.
That's great.
I think he really will bring home the essence of the movie, which is not just an episodic adventure about somebody who went and ripped off a bunch of people. I think it's more of a movie about a kid and the effect of divorce on children, and a child being alone and having to grow up very quickly and become creative in order to survive. It's entertainment, but it's all of that in a movie that has a message to it.
No matter what, you still love me.
I love you so much. I just want to be with you.
Okay, and then?
Well, I think even when you're saying that, it's possible we might not do the contact there.
Okay.
It's just be closing all this stuff up.
Okay.
There is a kind of almost redemptive quality to the story.
Ready? And action!
This was a kid who was running not so much because of the crimes, but there were kind of internal demons that he was running away from. You know, the failure of his father.
Ask me to stop.
There's almost something heroic about this character's attempt to reinvent himself over and over again. It really suggests that you can start over.
I look back on the whole filmmaking experience as, one of the best, even though I was sick for 2 months of the film. I look at it as one of the most adventurous films I've ever made, one of the best times I've ever had. Certainly the most energy being put out on my part and energy being put out by all the people around me into making a movie. It was sincerely a supercharged experience. I don't know if it could ever be duplicated in that sense.
Come on, Carl Kidd would have changed his name by now.
Can't change it. She thinks he's corners. If he loses the name, he loses the girl.
Okay. Okay.
That's Did you hear the Boston dialect in there? I had an idea of what I wanted to do as Carl, and I've now come to realize that even that is not finite to my own brain. To see everything else that Stephen has done and Leo has done in the course of the movie, I'm actually lucky because I get to see half of a movie I'm not in, and that anytime you can do that and have it be a Leonardo DiCaprio, Steven Spielberg connection, it's going to be a good time in the cinema. Green and bright.
Great, that was your best take. That was your best take. Part of the inspiration of doing Captain was twofold. One was, it does show that you can turn your life 180 degrees and make something better of yourself. But that's just the moral third act substitute for the fact that this movie is pure, unadulterated fun. It's got some very serious passages to it. but it's also has a tremendous sort of joie de vivre, which is, I think, who the actual Frank Abagnale is to me. And I remember when I decided to make the movie, I had a recollection that when I was first trying to be a movie director, I also went into a disguise. I became a 16-and-a-half-year-old executive with a tie and a suit, and I carried a briefcase, and I walked past Scotty at the main gate at Universal Studios. He let me in every day during summer vacation. 5 days a week for 3 months, I walked on and off that lot.
I mean, I think it's great.
In a way, I was, for that one moment, Frank Abagnale. And I think that was one of the touchstones for me that got me to say, I can get into this kid's skin. I kind of understand what he went through.
Great take, cut, print. This is the happiest ending I've had in the movie in about 6 years.